Welcome to Third Eyesight. Do you see spirits? Do you hear things? Do you want to talk about it? I'm your host, Juan, and I'm sharing with you my experiences with spirit, as well as interviewing folks who feel comfortable sharing their experiences with spirit. Let's get to it. So I'm here with Natalie Namaste. Thanks for joining, Natalie.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Thank you. So first I want to ask you, where are you based and what do you do?
Sure. So I'm based in New York. From 9 to 5, I am a human resources manager. So I live a pretty hectic life, 9 to 5, but my passion really is my tarot readings and connecting to spirit. So it's been an interesting, I don't want to say struggle, but it's been interesting balancing out that 9 to 5 life with my spiritual side. So it's some challenges in making time for that. But especially in the last 4 months, I've kind of evolved from where I was, and I've definitely become more busier. So a lot of what I'm learning now is how to balance all of that out. So it's been very interesting.
Yeah, that's quite a feat. And just to let everyone know, Natalie is actually Madison from episode 1. So I use the name Madison to protect Natalie's identity at the time when I launched my first episode, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to first ask you, Natalie, how did you first discover tarot, and what was your first deck that you ever got for yourself or someone ever got for you?
So this is a very fun question because I was 13 years old in Salem, Massachusetts with my mom, my family.
Ooh.
And what was funny was that was actually the year where I experienced the most paranormal activity of my whole life. So it's interesting looking back to see like, wow, I was into tarot during a time where there was a lot of stuff going on. So I was 13. My mom was getting a reading. My sister was getting a reading. And because I was 13, they were like, we don't really feel comfortable with this. She's too young. My Aries self found a way to get myself a reading at 13 years old. And I was just so upset that I couldn't get one. And I was like, please, like, I'm really open to this. Just let me have one. So finally, the woman actually she read me. And it's interesting too, the things that she said, because it did make sense in my life back then. She was like, who's this boy? And I just got involved with this guy who became, big part of my life after that. So it was interesting. She picked up on that being so young. So my experience was really beautiful with that because I thought it was just so interesting. The cards, they were all laid out and I was so drawn to them. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't understand it, but I was so drawn to this idea that there was a way to possibly predict future outcomes of things or guidance. So my mom actually recently told me that there was a man who also worked there and he kind of pulled her to the side. And he said, is that your daughter? Which was me. And he told her she's psychic. She's going to go through a lot of things. My mom told me years later, she didn't tell me that at the time.
Wow.
And I always thought that was super interesting that happened because I didn't really think paranormal things were different. I thought everyone went through this. I thought everyone saw spirits or heard them. So, my mom had that conversation with me very young. Please do not share this with your friends because they might not understand. So I definitely always had that kind of going on. But of course, after my reading, I was like, we need to go get my cards. So funny enough, I got Miss Cleopatra, as seen on TV reading, tarot cards. So you could still get them. I've actually seen them. And it was really a cool experience too. And I can't find the place that I went to, but it looked like a bar.
Okay.
But instead of drinks, they were all tarot cards. And she was like, pick whichever one you feel called to. Never found the place after. I've tried looking, but it was a really beautiful experience. So
wow.
I started to read, but not the way I do it now. I didn't look up any of the meanings. I just used my like intuition. I don't remember what I felt or did during that time, but I just remember looking at the cards and I read for a few people too, but of course, it wasn't the kind of readings I do now, but I just really used my intuition. And I feel like that's when my intuition opened up for sure.
When did you start making this a business of yours?
So I would say, let's see, like 2019, I had
Okay.
my first of what I think my spiritual awakening. If I could share that with you, if you'd like, which
Yeah, definitely.
it definitely was the turning point. And it's important to me because I want to kind of go back to when I was 13, because I was really open to this. I was excited about it. And at the age of 14 to 15, I feel like I took a turn for the worst in my personal life, and my vibrations were really low. I went through a lot of different challenging times very young. And by that happening, it kind of shut me off to spirit. It shut me off. It shut off my intuition. It made me feel like I was at a lower vibration. So I went through that for a very long time. I would definitely say my teen years were like the worst years of my life. And in 2019, I heard this thing called the law of attraction. And I was like, that's super interesting. Let me hear, let me read about this. Let me like learn about what this is. And I realized that the higher your vibration is, the more you'll attract what you want. So by me realizing this, now I had to do shadow work. I had to look at my past self and say, wow, you were at such a low vibration. No wonder why you were attracting such negative people, situations. So when I kind of realized that, I was like, let me try to uplift my spirits. So I started by doing manifestations. By I would literally wake up thanking the universe. That was my thing. Every morning
Mm.
before I even opened my eyes, I was like, thank you, universe, for this beautiful day. And I still do it now. I just made it a habit, a routine. And then one night, this is like the moment where it all made sense. I was in bed, and I used to stay up super late too. So I was always like on YouTube, whatever. And I saw pick a card reading. And I don't know what exact reading it was, but it just said pick a card tarot reading. And I was like, this is cool. Let me just click it here. And I went into it not believing, anything would happen. So I picked my pile. Every single thing this woman said resonated with me. And I was just like, this is amazing. So I, of course, went through her whole profile, kept doing these readings. And that's when it clicked to me. It was my voice, but it was put into my head, if that makes sense. You are meant to do this. This is your calling. Sure enough, I went on Amazon. I put in Rider Wave Tarot deck, got my deck, and since then I've been practicing and reading. And I think it's important also for people to know that tarot isn't something that there's a time frame where you can learn it. I still feel like I'm learning. Every single day I'll see a different symbol and I'll be like, oh, I feel like this makes sense. And, so you're always learning with tarot. And I'm sure you can also attest to that as well.
Yeah. Also, Natalie's the reason I got interested in learning tarot. So,
Oh.
like credit to you, Natalie, for my passion for tarot. But I started learning tarot during the pandemic. I remember 2 months or 3 months before the pandemic hit the US, I was at a holiday market in December. It must have been December, obviously. And 2019, actually, it was 2019. And I was at like a bookshop's tent at this holiday market. And you had given me a reading like the month or 2 months before that. And I was just drawn towards the Rider Waite tarot deck, and I bought it. And ever since then, I just started learning by the book. But even after learning by the book, it's like I'm still learning, because it's the way I see it. Some people eat with chopsticks, some people eat with forks and spoons and knives, and it doesn't matter how you eat. The fact is that both people are eating is just in different ways. And that's how I see tarot cards.
Exactly.
They're a tool. It's just one of many different tools to use, but the main function is using the intuition. So because the intuition takes the forefront and I'll say for folks like us to do readings for people, you're always learning something new about the tool you're using. So yeah, I totally resonate with that.
Yeah, it's so true. And I absolutely love it, because the older I get, the more I want to learn. Like I
Yeah.
was never like that. I was never a book person until like 3 years ago. Now that's all I want to do is read about whatever it is, chakras, tarot, moon, astrology. So it's definitely always going, which is incredible.
Yeah. Now, what do you do when you are doing a reading for somebody? You have a reading booked. Is there
Mhm.
something you do before you get into doing a reading with somebody, and after, like a before and after ritual?
Yeah, it definitely has changed over the few years that I've been doing this, but I definitely love to first protect myself. That's always key. Protect myself, prayer, and sage, always. And I also like to burn Palo Santo because Palo Santo not only removes negative energy, but it also welcomes in good energy. And I like to set intentions before I start as well. So before I do someone's reading, I call my spirit guides, I call my angels, everyone to guide me and help me do the best reading possible. Because as you know, it's not us, it's what spirit channels to us.
Yeah. And is there a way that you close, like, let's say you have a reading with somebody and I guess it's regardless of that person's energy, because my mind goes to, what if the person you're reading, their energy seems a little low? But even then, whether it's low or not, is there something you do afterwards to close that chapter of that reading and go on with your day?
So something I always do from the beginning is I take my cards and I sage them, because I feel like when I do the readings for people, their energy is inside my cards. And I use my own cards for myself too. I don't really have like a set deck specifically for clients. I also use them for myself as well. So that's key for me, is to cleanse that deck, say a prayer, and I kind of I knock on it 3 times to kind of like banish any energy, whether it's good or bad. Even if it's good energy, you kind of want that person's energy out of the deck after it's done. So that's super, super important to me.
Yeah, I always do that before I do a reading for a new person or a new group of people. I always sage it just to kind of like cleanse it of whatever was remaining from the previous reading. So I do the same thing. And as you've been booking readings with folks, what are the most common questions you hear people come to you with?
So I would say 90% of my clients want love relationship readings. It's all about romance. So I didn't know starting off like what kind of questions I was going to get, but primarily it's relationship questions. So they're all different. Some of them ask, will I be in a relationship soon? What kind of person's coming in? Or I'll have people who are maybe going through like a separation with a person. They need guidance. So it's typically that, but I do have a certain amount of people who want more general readings. So there's not really a question in mind. It's kind of like, what's coming up? What do you see for me? What are the challenges coming up? So I would say those two are like the most frequent readings that I do for people.
And are there absolute no-goes or boundaries you have with readings? Like, let's say someone wants to ask a certain type of question, or someone comes with a certain kind of energy. Are there boundaries that you have to set for yourself, that you, whether you've done that or not, like just things you keep in mind that are no-goes for you?
I do. So I actually had a situation years ago where this girl kept booking a reading with me, and I noticed that she just kept asking kind of the same questions because she just wanted that situation to like happen. And I had to tell her, this is not how it works. It's not being a fortune teller. You have to let what I call divine timing take place. You need to give it a break. So if I notice that someone is purchasing from me often, quite frequently like that, I do like to tell them, let things play out, because I don't first off, I would never want someone to, just keep spending money on the same questions. I'm not like that. I'm not someone who just wants to take. That's not the goal. So I definitely have had that happen, but also health and pregnancy questions I do not do, because I'm not God. I'm not someone who can tell you, yes, you're going to be perfectly fine. And I think a lot of people think that's what tarot reading is. And the more that I dive into this, the more I'm realizing this is just divine guidance. It's to provide clarity for people. It's not really fortune telling. It's not. So I definitely set boundaries when it comes to pregnancies and health, because it's such personal questions and big part of people's lives that they're asking about. And I would never want to be that person that they can go back and say, hey, that never happened. How dare you tell me that? So you know what I mean? So I kind of like to keep it general as best as I can.
Yeah, I what just came to mind for me is what we're doing, what you do is it's about healing. It's not about medicine. Medicine is a separate,
Mhm.
like they're both they're related, but healing can mean something very different from a cure or medicine. And that's a really healthy boundary. And also the fact that you prioritize somebody's relationship with their own relationship with divine timing and divinity, that just says so much about how much you put your ego aside when you do your work. Because we know there
Yeah,
are so many people out there that's like, they give you a reading and then it's like, well, for $400 more I can
right.
draw in the love of your life, but for $400 more on this date. And like, and there's so many people out there
Yeah,
that, and I do believe there are people that are gifted out there that do that. And
100%.
there are also people who are not, or who don't tap into that ability, that also scam people. But and I've come across those people myself. And so the fact
Mhm.
that you put aside the priority, like of course you have to make a living and you have to be compensated for your time, but the fact that you put your ego aside to make sure the person is having a healthy relationship with this, it just says a lot
Mhm.
about you.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely do believe that there are people out there who can do it. But if like I know that I can't, I won't, you know?
Right,
So
right. And hey, there
that's super.
are, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying that's super important.
Yeah, and there are, I believe they're called medical mediums. Like those exist. Whether I would go to a medical medium myself, even though I consider myself a medium of a different sort, I don't know if I would. I'd rather go to a doctor personally. But
Mhm.
everyone has that free will choice. But yeah, I really respect that you have the boundaries that you have in your readings. And I wanted to ask, before you delved into doing work of tarot, you mentioned that you had some experiences growing up with the paranormal, the supernatural. So, what was your relationship with this whole realm of things, like the extraordinary, the out of this world kind of things in life?
Sure. So, I mean, I don't remember this. I kind of do, but since I was two, my mom would always say I would be like looking in the corners of the room, just laughing, talking. And I met my spirit guide. I think, I don't know how old I was, but I do remember the earliest memory I had, I was 4 years old, where I met my spirit guide. And it was a beautiful experience. I was not scared. It felt very normal to me. And what's interesting is that my spirit guide was Native American, and I saw really graphic things, but I knew that it wasn't happening. It was past. So I told my mom exactly what I saw. And for a 4 year old to have like information like that, for it, this is a little graphic, but what I was shown when I was younger was a man being hung.
Hmm.
I didn't really watch my horror movies until I was like 5 or 6 years old, which is a different topic for another day. So I didn't have any like images like that for me to get anywhere, So I would tell my mom this, and I saw him up until I was like 8 or 9. And it would be random, but it was just this very comforting masculine feeling. So that was super interesting. That was like my first experience with spirit. And when I was 13, I had a more darker experience with spirit and ghosts, if you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom had purchased this piano from, I don't know exactly where she got it from, but it was a piano. It was old, whatever. So her thought was that me and my sister would learn how to play. We definitely didn't. We would just sit there and kind of like bang on the keys, and we didn't really pay attention to it. So we had it for, I think, a year, or no, less than a year. We probably had it for 6 months. So, in the beginning, it was totally fine. Nothing happened. And then during the summer, and the summer is actually when I went to get the tarot reading, by the way. So we started to notice that there were like sounds in my apartment. Nothing to be super alarmed with at first, but I definitely remember picking up on that. And the moment that will live in my head forever was when I was home alone. I was with my dog. It was early Saturday morning, and I had to use the bathroom. So I'm in the bathroom, and I just see this black figure like dart across my hallway. And I had a really long hallway, and it just darted, and it was so tall. It was the height of my ceiling, and it just ran by. For a split second, I said, "This is in your head." My dog who was with me gets up and she starts growling. She starts barking, looking in that same direction. I was petrified because I was young, but I was aware of things. But again, there was nothing that I was thinking of that could have like made me imagine that. You
Right.
know what I mean? And whatever that was, I call that spirit the piano man because we
Wow.
think that it was attached to that piano. So, but it gets a little bit crazier. So
Wow.
we would just see shadows, and then it was my sister who would see the shadows. It would be my mom who sees the shadows. And it didn't become comforting. I wasn't used to it. I was really scared. I was very scared.
Mm.
um and I remember that there was one night that I was sleeping, and I was so scared I would sleep with my mom because I was terrified. I was like, I'm not sleeping in my room alone. Like, I feel like something's watching me. And that was what it was. I felt like something was just watching me. So I'm sleeping with my mom. It's probably 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm sleeping on my side. So my ear is up. I will never forget this moment. Something whispered in my ear. It let out this really deep, long breath right in my ear. And you know that expression when they say this, what is it? Like the hairs on your back stand
Mm-hmm.
up. I was petrified because in that moment, I was like, this is real. Because, as people, we're going to think, this is fake, or not fake, but maybe you're making things up in your head.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the moment for me. It was clear as ever that there was something with me. And again, I was completely petrified. My mom she thought it was me calling her mommy, and she runs out of her room. No one's standing there. And, she knocks on my door. She was like, did you just come in to my room? And I was like, no, I'm here on my computer. So we had a lot going on there. So there was
Wow.
definitely more to that experience, but those were the two things that stood out. But the interesting thing is too, it revealed a little bit of itself to me. And it was this man with a hat, and it looked very old fashioned, the hat. And it just kind of peeked out at me and it went back. So it would poke itself in and out of corners to
Oh my
show
goodness.
me. And the crazy part is that my neighbors who had just moved in, maybe a year or two later, said, this sounds kind of crazy, but we keep seeing this long figure in our home that's wearing a hat. So
Oh
that
my
was for
gosh.
me the craziest part because we didn't know these people. We actually became really good friends with them, and we still speak now.
I'm sure
But at
after
the
that. It's like,
I know, and at the time we were just all very stunned by this because for my neighbors to experience the same thing was absolutely crazy. So needless to
wow.
say, we got rid of the piano. My mom sold it for free. She had a lot of people, wanting to buy it. And she would ask them, she was like, do you have children? So the people that had said yes, she was like, okay, I'm sorry, I can't sell this to you. And I think she ended up like donating it to like an antique shop or something. So
Wow. Good on
it
your
was a
mom. That's very conscientious of your mom and considerate.
mhm.
Well, and also I want to say I really appreciate that you briefly mentioned how when these things happened, like when you saw the shadow in the hallway, it's not like you were thinking of anything to make you think that. Because I feel like a lot of people who, and listen, I have an inner skeptic inside of me, and I totally believe what you're saying, but I know that my old inner skeptic self, like 5, 6 years ago, would have said, well, maybe you were like already scared and your brain made you see something. But
Right.
the fact of the matter is, I've also experienced things similar to that where like I was doing laundry and I wasn't thinking of anything. And then I see something. It's like, and you just can't explain it and the best proof, so to speak, that we have to prove to ourselves that this was real is that we weren't thinking of anything. You weren't thinking of anything in particular. You were just on your merry way doing things in your day
Exactly.
at
Like I was
home.
like
And
a normal 13-year-old girl on AIM talking to my friends, into like
throwback.
whatever High School Musical, whatever was out during that time. Like I wasn't like expecting this to happen. And even now I try to stay logical, even though I am, of course, such a believer of the afterlife. I do like to stay logical and say, is there a reason for this? And if I can't come up with a reason, then I accept that, okay, this is just a sign
Yeah.
from
Well,
spirit, from afterlife.
and the fact that your dog did what it did right after you saw that soul,
Yeah.
like that. And looking back today, do you have a sense of the state of that soul that you saw? Like, do you feel like it was lower vibrational energy, or how do you view it now looking back?
I definitely think that that was a negative energy that was manipulating. It was trying to scare me, because that's exactly what it did. It petrified me to the point where I couldn't sleep at night. Even if I had like my sister sleeping next to me, like I could not sleep. And again, there was no reason for me at that age to be like that terrified, but it was testing its energy with me. And that was like the first time I really felt such a dark energy, and how, I mean, I don't want to give them power, but if you do let them have that power, it is super powerful on yourself. Yeah. It definitely was testing us. And that experience kind of taught me two things. I don't buy antiques. I don't buy things that other people have previously owned, because you don't know what's attached to that. That could have been a lost soul that I encountered. So I definitely don't purchase anything that's used. And it also has taught me to kind of stand my ground a little bit more. As you know, I do struggle with that, but it definitely taught me that I am the powerful one here. And by removing that piano, it did remove that energy, whatever that was. It did kind of shoo it out, which I'm grateful for. But it taught me that there is more to life than what meets the eye, for sure.
Yeah. And tying this back to what we were initially talking about in this episode, given all your experience, all this experience you just shared from your childhood, how did introducing tarot into your life change your perception about these experiences, or changed how you interact with your own intuition?
I think that tarot has shown me more than anything that every single person in this world is intuitive. It's our choice if we want to open that up. Tarot has shown me that there's more to life than what we physically see here, that we do have spirit guides. We do have those good spirits around us that will help guide us along the way. So I think that my readings and my tarot experience has really opened me up even more to this afterlife, to this, other dimension, if you want to call it. So I feel like it brought me closer to my spirit guides, if that makes sense. Like I almost feel like it's made me less lonely.
Because totally understand that.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like when we go through life, we have people, of course, but sometimes we feel like alone. And just to know that there's something watching over me and protecting me is so comforting. So it definitely gives me that reminder.
Yeah, I really relate to that. And now taking it external, like we were talking about your intuition just now, how do you feel tarot affected or impacted the way you relate to other people, whether it's people that you're already close with, people that you meet? Yeah, has there been any impact there?
I think it's made me realize that we are all imperfect human beings here on earth, and we all have lessons from each other to learn. So it's definitely made me feel more connected, I think, with people, because sometimes we think that we're alone in this world. Maybe, we think that we're the only ones that have problems, but we all have problems, so it kind of gives me a softer spot for people, because especially now that I get so many readings, I'm like, my gosh, we're all going through something, not one person in this world, whether you are a billionaire, whether you have everything you want, is completely happy. There's always something. So it makes you realize that, we're all just people and we're the same.
Yeah, this work has also made me a little more humble and less judgmental. I think I'm a less judgmental person in doing this work. And I still have I mean, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, like I'm imperfect. We're all imperfect, but I still have more to learn about being non-judgmental. But since doing this work and focusing more on the spiritual end of living and being in this life, I'm way less judgmental than I used to be, and I'm a little more understanding and willing to listen. So I totally resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah, 100%. It makes you just realize that, we all need healing, and it gives you empathy for people. It gives and for yourself. So I do feel that empathy for sure with so many people that I connect with.